Yeah, at present, I'm 65 years old. I was born in 1955. And Jeremy asked to say a few things, for me to say a few things about my family. My dad, Jess Calloway Mills, was born in 1918. He would have been, had he still been alive, he would have been 102 years old this year. He died when he was 70. My grandfather died when he was, I think he was 92. His name was Bruce Mills. He was quite a character, a rambling man. My dad was an extremely hard worker, had 10 children. I had 9 brothers and sisters. My dad was an extremely hard worker, provided for us. And my mom died, Marie Mills, when she was 84. Took us to church. I was taken to church from the time I was a young man. She made sure we were respectful. She made sure we were kind. She made sure we were generous. And if we were disrespectful, we paid the price. My mom was a great woman. My dad was a great man. Just worked a lot, had to work a lot. And I had 4 brothers and 5 sisters. Had a wonderful childhood. Close to all my brothers and sisters. The older ones, Dickie, JB, Myrtle, Jewel, they were married and gone by the time I was up and going as a 5, 6, 7-year-old. They were already married and gone. So me, Brenda, Timmy, Patricia, Jesse, those are the ones that I was closer to because we were all at home at one time. I had a great childhood. Outdoors, fishing, camping. We lived outdoors. Had a pony when I was 12. Dad got me a pony. Been around horses most of my life, and had a great childhood, and was taken to church as a young man. Got married at 17 years old. 17. Couldn't even spell marriage, and was married at 17 years old. And married Brenda Jean Mills. Met her in Portsmouth, Ohio, where I was born. I was born in Portsmouth, Ohio, and we moved away from there when I was a young man, probably 3 or 4. So I don't remember much about Portsmouth, Ohio. We moved to Indiana, and I spent most of my life growing up in Indiana. When I was 12, my dad got me a horse when I was 12 years old. And I thought I was Roy Rogers, man. He bought me it was a small horse or a large pony, ever how you want to look at it. And it was a light cream colored, and I was 12 years old. And I had watched Roy Rogers, The Lone Ranger, all those shows on TV. And when I got that horse, man, I was Roy Rogers. I would come home from school. I wouldn't even go in and change. I'd lay my books on the porch. I'd run out, get that pony, brush him, put the saddle on him, put the bridle on him, and I would take off back in the woods. We lived on a 75-acre farm. I would take off back in the woods, or back through the lane. And I didn't have a cowboy hat. And I remember I would pull me a piece of grass and stick it in my mouth, and I would chew on that grass and ride that horse. And I was like in the Wild West. I was in the Wild West. And loved that horse. And named him Silver. That's Roy Rogers' horse name. And he got out one night and got hit by a car and got killed. Killed the horse. Actually didn't kill the horse. Broke its leg. The state policeman shot it. Had to put it down. So I was 11, 12. I was 12 when I got that pony. But before that, I was probably 8 or 9, and we had a horse in Indiana. We had horses. So, been around horses since I was just a kid. And then, before I got married, I had a horse. And then when I got married, I couldn't afford the horse and to feed Travis. So it was either feed Travis, or feed the horse.
Well, I'm glad you.
So I got rid of the horse. Travis was a year old. I got a picture of him. No, he wasn't quite a year old. He was probably 9 months old. I got a picture of him on that horse. Horse's name was Traveler. So I got rid of the horse. And then I didn't own horses again till Travis left, Jeremy left, Benjamin left home. And then Ryan and Heather were home. Then I thought, man, I could probably afford to feed them and a horse. Right. So yeah, when Ryan and Heather were home, after Ben got married, I ended up buying everybody horses. So we all had horses, yeah. And that's been 25 years ago, probably. So, yeah, I've had them. I've been able to afford them because I don't have kids to feed. I've been able to have horses for the last 25 years, so, yeah. But, yeah, I had them as a child. We had them as a child. I was 8 years old, we had them. And then I've got a picture of me on a set of workhorses when I was 5. My dad actually worked a team of horses when I was 5. And I got a picture of me and my sister sitting on those workhorses, 5 years old. So, yeah. So I've been around them my whole life. And when I raised you guys, I couldn't afford them. I'd like to have had them, but I couldn't afford them. So, yeah. So.
Any questions, Steve? You spoke about Grandpa?
Yeah, I talked about my dad and my granddad. Yeah. My dad would have been 102 years old if he was alive today. He was born.
Grandma's dad?
John Dunn. John Dunn lived in Indiana. He was a farmer, tobacco farmer, raised tobacco. That was my mom's dad. And the house that he lived in when I was a kid, I'll never forget. And it may still be there, I'm not sure. But the house he lived in, the window in the upstairs of the front of the house, the frame was a horseshoe. It was built, there were several houses in that part of Indiana built, whoever built them. The upstairs window in the front of the house, the frame was a horseshoe. Yeah, I remember that. My granddad on my mom's side was a farmer, and he made whiskey. He made moonshine most of his life. Not particularly to get rich or sell, but for himself. But he always made moonshine. He had a still, and he was a tobacco farmer. And as a child, we would go help set tobacco out. We'd help cut the tobacco when I was little. That was my mom's dad, John Dunn. But a quiet man, didn't say much. Farmer. He was a farmer. Hard working man. And he was a moonshiner, made moonshine. And when my dad was young, my dad actually sold the moonshine that John Dunn made. And my dad's uncle made moonshine. So most of my relatives and my granddad, my great-granddad, my great-uncles, they were all involved in the moonshine. They made moonshine. And my granddad on both sides made moonshine. It was just the way it was back in Kentucky. It was part of being in eastern Kentucky. That's just the way it was. And so when my granddad died, my mother's dad, when he died, his still went to my uncle, Jim. And Jim wanted somebody to carry on the tradition, so he tagged Tim because JB was a minister. Jesse was a minister. You know, Dickie went to church. I went to church. So he said, Tim, you need to carry on this tradition. So Tim put the still together and started making his own moonshine. Tim did. Now, whether he still has this, I'm sure he does. He still has it, I'm sure. Does he make moonshine? I doubt it anymore. But yeah, that moonshine still that Tim has came from my grandfather, my mom's dad. Yeah, so that's our heritage was My ancestors were from Virginia. So I don't know a lot about our ancestry. I had a friend do a search on Ancestry.com. I do know that my great-grandfather was born in Wise, Virginia. That's where we originated from. And I do know he was born probably the year or the year after the Civil War ended. So he was obviously too young. He couldn't have served in the Civil War. He had two older brothers that were of age to have served in the Civil War. Did they serve in the Civil War? I have no idea. Never got back that far. But they could have. They were old enough. They were like 16 and 17 years old. That would be my great-grandfather. His older two brothers could have served in the Civil War. But my grandfather did. He was not old enough. And then my grandfather was born in 1890 something. Bruce. And then they went from Wise, Virginia to Salyersville, Kentucky. So for years, my grandfather and grandmother lived in Salyersville, Kentucky, and that's where my dad was born, and my uncles and my aunts were born. And then from Salyersville, Kentucky, they started progressing north in Kentucky, and then eventually moved to southern Indiana. And at one point, we lived in Ohio. That's where I was born, southern Ohio. So my dad was he worked construction most of his life, usually on concrete crews, pouring concrete. So we traveled wherever the big jobs were, and those jobs would last 2 or 3 years. So normally we would move while my dad worked, and then we'd move to another location while my dad worked. So he worked on huge construction projects, and that's why we moved a lot, to follow the work. But my dad, my brother, two of my sisters, my grandfather, and my great-grandfather are buried all in the same place, in Hope, Kentucky. And that's where I plan on being buried, at the family plot. And I would think that my sons would want to be buried there with family. I mean, I'm 65 years old, and I mean, I'm getting ready to make arrangements I'm reserving me a spot there to end up. Not that I plan on showing up, but I'm going to reserve me a spot there. So I would hope that we all, when this life's over, we all end up there in that place, Hope, Kentucky. My mom, dad, brothers, sisters, granddad, great-granddad are all there, and other family members. I'm not sure, who else is there, but yeah. So we came from Europe and ended up in Virginia. But I would be interested in finding out more about our genealogy and what part of Europe we came from. My great-grandfather's name was Peter Newell Mills, and he was from Europe, and I'm not sure what part. I have no idea, but we'll have to follow up on that.